The sun-drenched streets of Willow Creek, Arizona Territory, had emptied as twilight descended in the summer of 1878, leaving Clara Bennett alone in the abandoned marketplace with nothing but her shattered hopes and a wagon that would no longer move. The wheel had broken clean off when the temperamental mule kicked it, and now she stood helplessly watching as the last merchant packed his wares and tipped his hat in her direction before disappearing down the dusty road. "I'll be back with help, miss," he had promised. But that was over an hour ago, and darkness had fallen like a heavy curtain across the small frontier town. Clara wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, fighting back tears of frustration. At 22, she had weathered far worse than a broken wagon wheel, but tonight, it felt like the final straw. She had journeyed west after her parents' death, carrying little more than determination and their family Bible. Her aunt's letter had promised a place to stay in Willow Creek, but when Clara arrived at the address, she discovered her aunt had sold the property months ago and moved to California. With nowhere to go and night closing in, Clara's situation grew more precarious by the minute. Willow Creek wasn't known for its safety after dark. The sound of distant piano music and raucous laughter drifted from the saloon at the far end of town, sending a shiver down her spine. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, checking the small derringer hidden in her reticule, a parting gift from her father. Someone will come. The crescent moon provided little light as she paced around her wagon, assessing the damage again in hopes of finding some solution. The supplies she had purchased, flour, sugar, coffee, and other essentials, sat vulnerable in the back of the wagon. Her life savings were sewn into the hem of her dress, but that wouldn't help her now. Then she heard it, hoofbeats, steady and approaching fast. Clara froze, heart pounding as a horse and rider materialized from the darkness. The silhouette grew larger as it approached, a tall man on an even taller horse, his features obscured by the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. "Hello?" she called, voice steadier than she felt, hand tightening around her derringer. The rider slowed his mount to a walk, then halted several yards away. "Evening, madam," came a deep voice, tinged with a southern drawl. "Seems you might be in some trouble." "The wheel," Clara replied cautiously. "It broke, and the man who promised to send help never returned." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, boots landing softly in the dirt. As he stepped into a patch of moonlight, Clara could finally see him clearly, tall and broad-shouldered, with a strong jawline softened by kind eyes. He couldn't have been more than 28, wearing trail-worn clothes and a gun belt that had seen its share of use. "Owen Prescott," he introduced himself, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that curled slightly at the edges. "I was passing through when I saw you standing here alone." "Clara Bennett," she replied, not entirely releasing her grip on the hidden gun. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Prescott, but how do I know your intentions are honorable?" A smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Smart question, Miss Bennett. In answer, I can only offer my word as a gentleman and this." He reached slowly into his vest pocket and pulled out a deputy's badge. "I work for Sheriff Hobson over in Cottonwood Springs. Was just delivering a prisoner to the territorial jail in Prescott." Clara relaxed slightly, though years of caution kept her vigilant. "Thank you for stopping, Deputy Prescott." Owen examined the broken wheel with a frown. "This won't be a quick fix. The axle's damaged too." He stood, brushing dust from his hands. "Town's not safe for a lady alone at night. There's been talk of the Shelton gang operating in these parts." Clara's stomach tightened at the mention of the notorious outlaws. "What do you suggest?" "I can take you to the boarding house, Mrs. Sullivan's place. It's respectable and she'll have a room. We can come back for your things in the morning." "And leave everything here?" Clara gestured to her supplies and trunk. Owen considered for a moment. "We'll take what we can carry now. I'll help you onto my horse, and will lead your mule. Tomorrow, I'll arrange for the blacksmith to fix your wagon." Clara hesitated, weighing her limited options. The night was growing colder, and she had nowhere else to go. "Very well, Deputy." With efficient movements, Owen secured her most valuable possessions to his saddle. He packed her trunk with the provisions that would spoil and loaded it onto his horse. As he worked, Clara noticed the careful precision of his movements, a man accustomed to solving problems. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. Clara nodded, accepting his assistance as he lifted her effortlessly onto his horse. Owen mounted behind her, one arm reaching around to take the reins. The unexpected proximity made her breath catch. She hadn't been this close to a man since dancing with her father at her cousin's wedding years ago. "Comfortable?" he asked, his voice close to her ear. "Yes," she managed, grateful for the darkness that hid her flushed cheeks. They rode through town, the mule trudging obediently behind them. The closeness of Owen's body provided welcome warmth against the night chill, and despite her reservations, Clara found herself relaxing into the security of his presence. "What brings you to Willow Creek, Miss Bennett?" Owen asked as they passed the saloon, where piano music spilled into the street. "My aunt," Clara explained. "She wrote to me after my parents died, offering a place to stay. But when I arrived, I discovered she'd sold her property and moved on." "I'm sorry to hear that," Owen said, his voice sincere. "Losing family is never easy." "No, it isn't," Clara agreed softly. "What about you? Has your family always been in these parts?" "My father was a Texas Ranger. After the war, we moved to Arizona Territory. He believed there'd be opportunities here." There was a hint of something unresolved in his tone. "He was killed 3 years ago by cattle rustlers. That's when I pinned on this badge." "I'm sorry for your loss," Clara said, understanding the weight of his words. They arrived at a modest 2-story building with a sign reading, "Sullivan's Boarding House." Warm light glowed from the windows, and the building looked well-maintained compared to its neighbors. Owen dismounted first, then gently helped Clara down. His hands lingered at her waist for a moment longer than necessary before he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Let me speak to Mrs. Sullivan," he said, lifting Clara's trunk from his horse. The proprietress turned out to be a robust woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She looked Clara up and down with undisguised scrutiny. "Deputy Prescott vouches for you, and that counts for something," Mrs. Sullivan said after hearing their situation. "I have 1 room available. Payment in advance, no gentlemen callers, and breakfast is served at 6 sharp." Clara paid for a week's lodging, hoping it would be enough time to sort out her situation. "I'll be back at first light to check on your wagon," Owen promised as he prepared to leave. "Try to get some rest, Miss Bennett." "Thank you, Deputy Prescott," Clara said sincerely. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Something flickered in his eyes, a warmth that went beyond professional courtesy. "Sometimes, Miss Bennett, we find ourselves exactly where we're meant to be." With a tip of his hat, Owen departed, leaving Clara to follow Mrs. Sullivan up a narrow staircase to a small but clean room. As she prepared for bed, Clara found herself replaying the events of the evening, particularly the feeling of security she'd experienced in Owen's presence. It was foolish, she knew, to place so much trust in a stranger, no matter how honorable he seemed. Yet there had been something in his steady gaze that spoke of reliability, a rare commodity in these uncertain times. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the lace curtains. Clara dressed quickly in her second-best dress, a practical blue cotton with white trim, and pinned her honey-brown hair into a simple but tidy arrangement. Downstairs, she found a simple breakfast of eggs, biscuits, and strong coffee being served to the boarding house's 4 other residents, a schoolteacher, an elderly couple, and a land surveyor. Mrs. Sullivan waved Clara to an empty chair. "Your deputy friend has been busy this morning," she said, pouring coffee. "Already spoke with Jenkins the blacksmith and arranged for your wagon repairs." Before Clara could correct the assumption that Owen was her deputy, a knock came at the door. Mrs. Sullivan answered it to reveal Owen, looking fresher than he had the previous night, his dark hair still damp from washing. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," he greeted, hat in hand. "I hope you slept well." "Very well, thank you," Clara replied, surprised at how pleased she was to see him. "Mrs. Sullivan tells me you've already spoken to the blacksmith. Jenkins says he can fix the wheel and axle, but it'll take 2 days." Owen accepted the cup of coffee Mrs. Sullivan offered. "I've had your supplies moved to his storage shed for safekeeping." Clara's relief was tempered by concern. 2 days? I hadn't planned on such an expense. Owen hesitated. "If you're worried about funds, I know the general store owner is looking for temporary help. His wife's expecting their 4th child any day now." "I wouldn't want to impose on your time further," Clara said. "It's no imposition," Owen assured her. "I was planning to stay in town for a few days anyway. Sheriff gave me some time off after that prisoner transport." Clara studied him, wondering if he was being entirely truthful about his reasons for staying. Nevertheless, she needed the work, and his offer was generous. "Then I accept your assistance, Deputy Prescott." "Thank you." After breakfast, they walked to Thompson's general store. The owner, a harried-looking man with spectacles and a friendly demeanor, was visibly relieved at the prospect of help. "Mrs. Thompson is confined to bed rest, and I'm running myself ragged between customers and checking on her," Mr. Thompson explained. "If you can mind the store for the next 3 days, Miss Bennett, I'd be most grateful." They agreed on a fair wage, and Clara found herself behind the counter while Owen excused himself to check on her wagon's progress. The store kept her busy throughout the morning as she assisted customers, organized inventory, and recorded sales in the ledger. The work was straightforward, and Clara enjoyed the interaction with townspeople, many of whom were curious about the newcomer. Owen returned at midday, carrying a package wrapped in brown paper. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, placing it on the counter. Inside was a sandwich and an apple from the hotel restaurant. "That's very thoughtful," Clara said, touched by the gesture. "Will you join me?" They ate together in the quiet store, and Clara found herself opening up about her journey west, her hopes of finding a place to belong, and her uncertainty about what to do next. "What about you?" she asked. "Have you always planned to be a lawman?" Owen's expression grew thoughtful. "Not always. I was studying law books before my father died. Thought I might become an attorney someday." He smiled ruefully. "Life has its own plans sometimes." "Do you enjoy being a deputy?" "Most days," he admitted. "There's satisfaction in protecting people, in standing for something right in a place where right and wrong can get muddled." He looked at her with unexpected intensity. "What about you, Miss Bennett? What do you stand for?" The question caught Clara off guard. "I suppose resilience, faith, the belief that kindness matters, even in harsh places." She brushed crumbs from her skirt, suddenly self-conscious. "Simple things, really?" "Not simple at all," Owen said quietly. "Those are the things worth fighting for." Their conversation was interrupted by customers, but Clara found herself thinking about Owen's words throughout the afternoon. By closing time, she was tired but satisfied with her day's work. Owen was waiting outside when she locked up. "May I escort you to dinner, Miss Bennett? The hotel serves a decent meal." In the fading light, with his earnest expression and the day's dust on his boots, he looked less like the imposing figure who had rescued her and more like a man one whose company she was beginning to enjoy perhaps too much. "I would like that," she replied. The hotel dining room was modest but clean, with checkered tablecloths and a small vase of wildflowers on each table. Over beef stew and cornbread, they continued their conversation from earlier, discovering shared interests in books and music. Owen spoke of his younger sister in Cottonwood Springs, who was married to the local doctor, and Clara told him about growing up in Illinois, where her father had been a schoolteacher. "You're educated, then?" Owen observed. Clara nodded. "Father believed daughters should learn as much as sons. I've taught school myself back east." "Willow Creek could use a good teacher," Owen said thoughtfully. "The last one left 3 months ago to get married." The idea took root in Clara's mind. "Do you really think there might be an opportunity here?" "I could inquire with Mayor Holcomb tomorrow," Owen offered. "He chairs the town council that oversees such appointments." As they walked back to the boarding house in the purple twilight, Clara felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced since leaving home. Their steps slowed as they approached Mrs. Sullivan's, neither seeming eager for the evening to end. "Thank you for dinner," Clara said, pausing on the porch steps. "And for everything else. You've been uncommonly kind to a stranger." Owen's expression softened in the lamplight. "You don't feel like a stranger, Miss Bennett." He hesitated, then added, "Clara, if I may." The sound of her name on his lips sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. "You may, Owen." He took a step closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "I should let you rest." "Yes," she agreed, though neither moved. The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with unspoken words. Finally, Owen took her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, proper yet intimate. "Good night, Clara." "Good night, Owen." She watched him walk away, wondering at the strange sensation in her chest, like anticipation and contentment intertwined. The next 2 days fell into a pleasant rhythm. Clara worked at the store during the day while Owen divided his time between checking on her wagon repairs and speaking with town officials. In the evenings, they dined together, their conversations growing deeper and more personal. Clara learned about Owen's dreams of establishing a horse ranch someday, and she shared her own hopes of finding a permanent home after years of uncertainty. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Owen arrived at the store with news. "The town council is interested in meeting you," he announced. "They've been without a teacher for months, and when I mentioned your experience, Mayor Holcomb was quite enthusiastic." Clara's heart leaped. "That's wonderful news." "There's more," Owen continued, his expression brightening. "Jenkins finished your wagon early. It's good as new, maybe better." Clara's smile faltered slightly. With her wagon repaired, there was no practical reason for Owen to remain in Willow Creek or for their paths to continue crossing. "That's excellent," she managed. "I should thank him properly." Owen seemed to read her thoughts. "The meeting with the council is tomorrow morning. I thought perhaps, if you're agreeable, we might celebrate tonight. There's a social at the church, nothing fancy, just music and refreshments." "I'd like that very much," Clara replied, her spirits lifting. That evening, Clara took extra care with her appearance, wearing her best dress, a sage green cotton with subtle embroidery at the collar, and arranging her hair in a more elaborate style than usual. Mrs. Sullivan watched with knowing eyes as Clara descended the stairs. "Deputy Prescott is a good man," the older woman remarked. "Not like most who pass through here." "Yes," Clara agreed simply, unwilling to voice the growing feelings in her heart. She had known Owen for only 3 days, far too soon for the kind of attachment she feared was developing. Owen arrived precisely at 7, dressed in a clean shirt and vest, his usual trail-worn appearance polished for the occasion. His eyes widened appreciatively when he saw Clara. "You look beautiful," he said with disarming directness. The church social was a lively affair, with local families gathered in the newly constructed community hall. A fiddler and banjo player provided music, while tables laden with pies, cakes, and punch lined one wall. Clara was introduced to numerous townspeople, including Mayor Holcomb, a portly man with an impressive mustache who expressed great interest in her teaching background. "We've 15 school-age children in Willow Creek and another dozen in the surrounding homesteads," the mayor explained. "The position comes with living quarters above the schoolhouse, modest but private." The prospect of permanent employment and housing was more than Clara had dared hope for. "I would be honored to be considered, Mayor Holcomb." As the evening progressed, Owen led Clara onto the makeshift dance floor for a Virginia reel. They moved together in perfect synchronization, their hands meeting and parting in the pattern of the dance. When the music slowed to a waltz, Owen's hand at her waist guided her gently, his touch respectful yet warm. "You dance well, Deputy," Clara remarked, breathless from both the exertion and his proximity. "My mother's influence," Owen replied with a smile. "She insisted proper gentlemen should know how to dance. She taught you well." As they circled the floor, Clara became aware of curious glances and whispered conversations. It seemed their frequent companionship had not gone unnoticed by the townspeople. "People are watching us," she murmured. Owen's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Let them watch. I'm not ashamed to be seen dancing with the prettiest woman in the room." His words sent warmth spreading through her chest. "Owen, I know it's been only days," he said quietly, "but I feel as though I've known you much longer, Clara. There's something about you, something true and steady that I've never found before." The music ended before Clara could formulate a response, and they were soon separated by well-meaning townspeople eager to introduce themselves to the potential new teacher. Throughout the remainder of the evening, however, Clara found her gaze returning to Owen, and often discovered him already watching her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. It was late when they finally departed, walking slowly back to the boarding house under a canopy of stars. The night was cool but pleasant, with the scent of sage and distant rain on the breeze. "Tomorrow, after your meeting with the council, would you ride with me?" Owen asked suddenly. "There's someplace I'd like to show you." "I'd love to," Clara replied, curious. They reached the boarding house and paused on the porch, just as they had nights before. This time, however, Owen seemed less hesitant. "Clara," he began, his voice low, "I know we've known each other only briefly, but in that time, I've come to admire you greatly. Your courage, your kindness, your strength in the face of adversity, they're remarkable." Clara's pulse quickened. "I've come to admire you as well, Owen. More than I perhaps should." He took her hands in his. "There's no should about feelings, Clara. They simply are." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I'm not a man given to hasty decisions or impulsive actions. As a lawman, I've learned to observe, to evaluate, to wait for certainty. But with you," he shook his head with a wondering smile, "with you everything is different, clearer somehow." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying, Owen?" "I'm saying that when I found you alone in that marketplace, I wasn't just passing through by chance. I believe I was meant to be there, just as I believe meeting you has changed the course of my life." His eyes held hers with unmistakable intent. "May I kiss you, Clara?" The question, so proper and yet so intimate, made her heart soar. "Yes," she whispered. Owen leaned forward, one hand rising to gently cup her cheek as his lips met hers. The kiss was tender, almost reverent, a perfect expression of the connection that had grown between them. Clara responded with equal gentleness, allowing herself to savor this moment of pure happiness. When they parted, Owen's eyes were bright with emotion. "Good night, Clara. I'll see you tomorrow." "Good night, Owen," she replied, her voice soft with newfound joy. The following morning, Clara met with the town council and was formally offered the position of schoolteacher for Willow Creek. The salary was modest but fair, and the living quarters, as Mayor Holcomb had mentioned, would provide her with independence and stability. Clara accepted gratefully, her mind already filling with plans for lessons and school organization. Owen was waiting outside the town hall, his horse and Clara's wagon ready for their excursion. He helped her onto his horse and led them out of town, riding westward into the rolling hills. After about an hour, they crested a rise that revealed a stunning vista of verdant valley with a clear stream running through it, surrounded by stands of cottonwood and pine. In the distance, purple mountains rose against the sky. "It's beautiful," Clara breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. 15 acres of it are mine," Owen revealed, surprising her. "I purchased the land last year. Been saving to build on it." Clara turned to look at him. "Your ranch?" Owen nodded, his expression earnest. "The beginning of it. Good water, good grazing, protected from the worst of the winter winds." He dismounted and helped Clara down, then led her to a spot near a large cottonwood tree. "I thought to build the house here, facing east to catch the sunrise." Clara could envision it a solid home with a wide porch, children playing in the yard, horses grazing in the distance. It was a beautiful dream. "Why show me this?" she asked, though her heart already knew the answer. Owen took her hands in his expression serious yet tender. "Because I wanted you to see the future I'm working toward. Because in the days since I found you alone in that marketplace, I've come to believe that future would be infinitely better with you in it." Clara's eyes widened. "Owen, we've known each other less than a week." "I know," he acknowledged with a rueful smile. "It sounds impulsive, perhaps even foolish, but my father once told me that when he met my mother, he knew within days that she was the one he wanted to build his life with. I never understood how that could be possible until now." He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm not asking for an immediate answer, Clara. You have your teaching position now, your own path forward. All I'm asking is that you consider the possibility of a future together, in time." Clara looked out over the peaceful valley, then back at Owen's hopeful face. In his eyes, she saw honesty, respect, and genuine affection, everything she had ever hoped to find in a partner. "My parents had a love match," she said softly. "Father always said you know it's right when being with someone makes you more yourself, not less." She smiled up at Owen. "I feel more myself with you than I have in years." Owen's face brightened with hope. "Is that a yes to considering our future?" Clara laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "It's a yes to beginning that consideration. We have time, Owen. I'm not going anywhere." His smile was radiant as he drew her into his arms, kissing her with greater passion than the night before. Clara responded in kind, allowing herself to embrace the unexpected joy that had entered her life. In the months that followed, Clara established herself as Willow Creek's teacher, earning the respect of both students and parents with her dedication and skill. Owen continued his duties in Cottonwood Springs but visited Willow Creek frequently, their courtship progressing with steady purpose. By Christmas, Owen had formally asked for Clara's hand in marriage, presenting her with his mother's ring, a simple gold band with a small pearl. Their wedding in the spring was a town celebration, with even Sheriff Hobson riding in from Cottonwood Springs to see his deputy married. Clara's schoolhouse apartment became their temporary home, while Owen completed construction on their ranch house. Weekends were spent at the property, working side by side to create the home they had envisioned. By the following winter, the house was finished enough to move in, though Clara continued teaching in town, riding to and from the ranch each day. 2 years after their wedding, Clara gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Owen's mother. As she watched her husband cradling their newborn with tender wonder, Clara reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, noticing her contemplative expression. About that night in the marketplace, Clara replied, smiling. How frightened I was. How uncertain of my future. Owen leaned down to kiss her forehead. I thank God every day that I decided to take that shortcut through town. As do I, Clara said, reaching up to touch his cheek. My gallant deputy, riding through the darkness to my rescue. We rescued each other, Owen corrected gently. You gave me a home, Clara, not just this house, but here. He placed his hand over his heart. As their daughter slept peacefully between them, Clara Bennett Prescott knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world, not in a town or a building, but in the love of the man who had appeared when she needed him most, and in the family they were creating together. From a broken wagon wheel to a life built on love and mutual respect, their journey had only just begun. And as the sun set over their valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Clara gave silent thanks for the twist of fate that had left her alone in that marketplace, waiting for the cowboy who would change her life forever.